So fun, yes, I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about is fun, but I'll do my best to make it so. I come from Call, Scotland, which is based in Edinburgh University, and we're a national centre mainly funded by the Scottish Government, working in the area of technology for pupils and young people with additional support needs. We carry out a number of functions, so we go out to schools and see young people and try and suggest technology that might be most appropriate for them. We run courses and CPD events, and we have a website or two. We try and provide some input and advice to the Scottish Government on occasion when they ask. We have a loan bank of assistive technology, which you can borrow. We don't have too many iPads, I'm afraid, but we do have one or two. And we carry out a number of research projects. This machine seems to be very slow on the uptake. There we go. So I'm going to just make a few general observations about the role of, or the potential role of new technologies, one-to-one tablets, iPads, whatever, for the kind of pupils that we talk about. The way I've structured it is we'll have a look at some of the devices we have currently, or that have been used for the past few years. And we'll have a wee think about the benefits of the devices that we've been working with, and about some of the challenges. Then we'll think about some of the new learning devices, your iPads, and we'll think about how the benefits and the challenges of what we've currently got might be addressed by the new technologies. So, curriculum for excellence. You must have heard this, so you're blue in the face, and anyone who's come on any of the talks I do, no matter what I'm talking about, I'll mention this. Successful learners, confident individuals, etc., etc. And so these are the questions that we want to pose to you. How can you be a successful learner if you can't read books and access learning materials? How can you be a confident individual if you depend on others to read to you or write for you or talk for you? How can you be a responsible citizen if you've got difficulty accessing information? And how can you be an effective contributor if you have difficulty speaking, writing, or otherwise communicating? And of course, for the kind of young people that we work with, then technology has got some positive things to say about all of these questions. So one-to-one mobile technologies is one of the things that we're talking about today, and a simple definition of this is, well, it's one computer or one device per pupil, not only in the class, also at home, on the bus, as we've heard. Now, one of the things I'll just comment on is that one-to-one, of course, is not new for additional support needs. We've had one-to-one devices in our field for, well, since the 80s. And so 3 examples. Voice output communication aids really first became useful in the early 80s, and the most well-known user is probably Professor Stephen Hawking. And the Campac that he started with appeared around about 1984. So there's nothing new about one-to-one for him. Writing tools. The earliest writing tool that I remember using that was a portable one-to-one device was a Tandy 102, and those of us who've been in this field for as long as I have will remember them, and it came out in 1986. Reading tools, braille displays, screen reading software for people who've got no vision or low vision, been around since the 80s as well. So one-to-one is nothing new for the additional support needs field. Okay, so let's have a wee think about the kind of impact of the kind of technology that we have been used to in the past. And I'll just show you a few examples. This is an example of Joseph's handwriting. Joseph is in a primary school, and he's obviously got difficulty with the motor side of handwriting, and also spelling and putting sentences together. The top paragraph on the screen has got an example of his writing using a word processor. So straightforward word processor, nothing fancy, and what we can see immediately is that the quality of the text is obviously more legible. So nothing too fancy about that. There are still quite a lot of spelling mistakes on this particular effort. The paragraph below is a sample of his writing done using a co-writer word prediction program, which helps him to spell more accurately. If you can see, what you will see is the spelling accuracy is much better. So nothing fancy about that, but clearly he could be a more effective contributor by using this type of technology. Another couple of examples. A teacher commenting on a use of a personal notebook next book by a child. Jay is no longer excluded by the position of the computer system. Previously he had to sit with his back to the class because of the location of the classroom computer, because they only had one in the class. Now he's got his netbook, peers are more ready to allow Jay to take a role in scribing as part of the group, and he's able to type his ideas and share with peers who previously found his handwriting very difficult to read. So nothing fancy about that, it's just a netbook computer that happens to be on his desk instead of at the back of the room. Another example, talking about an AlphaSmart writing aid. What a difference the simple machine has made to her self-esteem. She thought it was wonderful and made her schoolwork easier to cope with. She no longer thought people called her thick because she was slow to complete her work. I'm deliberately choosing examples of what we would regard as old technology, because I want to make this point. Effective contributor, we have an example of a communication aid. Frank is now using his springboard light along with his gestures, signs and low-tech communication system to integrate more fully in the class, and he has also started to communicate more effectively with his peers, a real success story. So that's commenting about a voice out communication aid. So, effective contributor, a few things about responsible citizens. One of the things that we're always concerned with about technology is whether young people will take care of it or take it down the pub and sell it. And I think I'll leave that. If you have a read of the research, the suggestion is that most young people are quite responsible, maybe not all. So here's an example. Jay takes the responsibility of looking after the netbook seriously, making sure it's switched off and on when needed. Confident individual. One of the things that people who know me, I've been working with, are the SQA digital question papers. And for me, it's one of the most exciting things I've been involved with, because what we've now got is almost half the schools in Scotland half the secondary schools in Scotland using digital exam papers. And what it means is we've got hundreds, if not thousands, of young people who are working independently. If they've got reading difficulty, they have the question paper read out to them by the computer. If they've got writing difficulty, they can use technology to support them instead of a scribe. So instead of relying on human beings to read their exam paper and write their answers, they can do it by themselves on the computer. And one of the things that gives me most pleasure is when teachers say the young people are happier and more confident. They might be more successful as well, but it's the fact that they are definitely more confident because they're doing it themselves. And I think that's one of the things that technology offers young people with additional skills. So, effective contributor, responsible learner, confident individual, and a successful learner. A few examples, comments back from young people that we've worked with. Jay is able to show and do the best he can. He thinks of new ideas and is more interested in tackling writing activities by himself. That's a comment on a young person using a personal netbook. I like the AlphaSmart because it helps me write quicker, and when I'm writing, my hand gets sore, but it does not get sore when I use the AlphaSmart. Simple, but very meaningful for that particular young person. I wanted to let you know how successful, from my point of view, AB's scanned maths materials have been. With him being able to fill in the answer boxes independently, I can really assess the areas he is securing. And that's a comment about a primary school teacher and a pupil that's using a digital version of a maths book on the computer because he can't write by hand. So it's the same book, it's just in a digital format. You might be thinking, isn't this great? It's all just fantastic. It's all sorted. The world is a wonderful place. And it is sometimes. So let's now think about some of the difficulties that we face when we're using and introducing this kind of technology. Because you're bound to be sitting there thinking, well, that's all very well, but I know plenty of situations where it's not worked. And so let's think about the reasons why it gets a bit tricky. And the first example I want to think about is a really simple, basic thing. We've got a young person here who's in third year. He's got a physical disability. He cannot handle paper. He can't open books. He can't hold books. He can't turn pages. He can't find anything in the book. What he can do, though, is use his laptop computer. He is an independent user of a laptop computer. He's very skilled, and so what he needs is digital versions of his books and his teacher-produced materials and everything so that he can do it by himself. If he doesn't have that, what happens is somebody sets the book up in front of him and then he shouts for somebody to come and turn the page. So that's not the best we can do. So how do we get these books onto his laptop so that he can access them? And it's a wee example. He's doing 8 standard grade courses. He needs 28 textbooks for these courses. And so if you go to the publisher, well, in fact, you could go to Amazon and you would get nowhere. You could go to iBookstore, you would get nowhere. You could go to RM Books via the latest incarnation of Glow, you would get nowhere, because none of the Scottish secondary school textbooks are available in digital formats that you can buy off the shelf. So that's a bit of a problem. So if you go to the publisher direct, we managed to get 7 of these books, 1/4 of these books from the publisher, so far so good. But the rest, the other 21, totaling 2,776 pages, but that's only about 50% of what you need. You also need all the stuff that the teachers produce and in Word format or, photocopied worksheets going back for 15 years or whatever it is they use. And so you've got to scan them as well. And so the year before, in the second year, they had an assistant and she scanned the whole lot, 1,010 resources for the whole of the second year. And it took a day a week for a session. So that must be a challenge, I think. No matter which way you look at it, that's a bit of a job. But that's what needs to be done. So if we don't do that, then one of the difficulties that we've got when dealing with this kind of technology is that it makes it harder for young people to access the learning materials that the other pupils in the class are using. And it's really important. It's really important because if you can't access, if you can't read, if you can't get hold of the learning materials, it is quite hard to learn, obviously. It's also important because you're expected to do it under equality and disability legislation. And you have, I say you, and I mean me as well, and we have been expected to do this, to provide accessible copies, accessible versions of learning materials since at least 2002. And we know it doesn't happen. The Scottish Government in 2002 issued guidance. Responsible bodies should ensure that any information that is important to enable pupils to learn or to participate in school activities can be provided in an alternative form if the pupil has difficulty reading information provided in standard written form. And we know that it's not happening. It happens in some areas, but it's certainly not true across the board. And it's just as important as providing physical access, but it just doesn't seem to happen. So that's a real challenge for us. Let's have a wee think about what the situation is now. A few weeks ago, SQA, I noticed, published a list of the set Scottish texts for National 5 and higher. And I thought, I wonder if you can actually get hold of those in a digital format. So I had a wee look on Amazon, Library Bookstore, RM Books, and what I found is that Bold Girls, Sailmaker, Tally's Blood, Hieroglyphics and Other Stories, The Testament of Gideon Mack, Kidnapped, and poems by Caroline Duffy and Edwin Morgan are not that easy to find in e-book format. We have a few of them on the Books for All database, which is our database of accessible formats. But clearly, if you're thinking about digital learning materials, at this moment in time, we've got some way to go when it comes to academic texts. What I will say is I have ordered paper copies of all of these materials, and within 2 weeks at the very most, we will have scanned PDFs up on the Books for All database for pupils with print disabilities to access. So we can do something about that, but only for people who've got print disabilities, blindness, visual impairment, physical disabilities. So that's one of our challenges. How do you get hold of accessible materials, digital materials, onto these devices that our young people are using so that they can read the same resources as everybody else? Second challenge we come across is to do with staff expertise. And this is a graph from the Donaldson Review of Teacher Education. And what it says, it's the results of a questionnaire asking newly qualified teachers which areas they felt least or most well prepared within as a result of their initial teacher education. And the 3 areas that teachers feel least well prepared are ICT is the area where teachers, newly qualified teachers, feel least well prepared. Second is safeguarding and child protection. And third is additional support needs. The areas where they feel most secure are classroom management, pedagogy, and subject content. So in our area, dealing as we do with ICT and additional support needs, that tells us that, not surprisingly, your average newly qualified teacher is going to find that tricky. And sure enough, they do. And who can blame them? Because we find it tricky. We're supposed to be experts in laptops and Windows and software, and now we're supposed to be experts in iPads and Androids, and if we find it hard to keep up. So imagine the situation where you get some pupil appearing in your class, and the child has got a bunch of medical needs, perhaps, a whole pile of equipment, ancillary equipments, wheelchairs, standing frames, and then somebody turns up and says, I tell you what we need here is a computer with a bunch of software that you've never seen, and you're expected to get on with it and integrate that into your classroom life. I mean, it's a hard job. And so it might be tricky for mainstream ICT, but when you combine it with additional support needs, then it all starts to get a wee bit hard. So that's a real challenge. Third challenge that we come across with is just to do with accessible ICT. So you go into your average school and you want to change the mouse speed on a computer, and you can't, because you can't get at the control panel. And that's a big problem, a seriously big problem. You phone up the technician, and if you're in one of these local authorities that's been smart enough to outsource their IT support, your school will get stung for some fee for them to come out and do it. That's not good. That's not good enough, not nearly good enough. Can you put specialist software on your computers? We've had high-quality Scottish computer voices licensed, the Heather Voice, since 2007, free of charge for the whole of Scottish education, and we've had Stuart since 2010, I think, free of charge. So a straw poll then, you guys, as representing either your school or local authority, hands up who's got Heather and Stuart installed on the computers. Hands up who doesn't. And hands up who doesn't know what I'm talking about. One or two. Okay. Text-to-speech voice, reading stuff out from the computer, free Scottish voices. You want it on your machine because it's a high-quality voice and it makes it easier to understand. This is good, though. If we'd asked this question, even a year ago, it might not have been so positive. What that looks like is maybe about 80% of the people in the audience here have actually got the Scottish voices on their computer. It's only taken us 5 years, but progress is being made. Do you have text-to-speech software? Is the other one? I don't know. Let's ask the same thing. Who's got a generic, bog-standard text-to-speech program that can read from the internet or from Word documents or from PDFs? Not bad. Who doesn't have such a program? That's still good. It's good. Okay, so specialist software. Second one, how long does it take to install software to provide access? And this is a real problem, and it's to do with the specialised nature of what we're talking about. I went to see a pupil in December. We wanted to get a co-writer word prediction program stuck on the netbook, and it took 3 months. Now, this is equivalent for him, as we saw earlier. This is equivalent for this person of pretty much a pencil and paper. The quality of the work that these people can produce by using word prediction is in a different league. And we wouldn't, hang around for 3 months waiting for somebody to turn up with a new pencil or a sharpener for the said pencil. And it's just unacceptable for that length of time. I mean, we understand it. I'm an engineer. I appreciate the problems, particularly with some of the changes that we have for technical support. I take my hat off to the technicians in schools who do such a great job. So it's not their fault, but the system is not adequate. It's not fit for purpose when you've got people who rely on this kind of technology and it takes 3 months to get the thing. Last one here, a very basic question. Do learners have access to personal devices? And this takes us back to this one-to-one question. In different parts of Scotland, we have different answers to this point. In some areas, it's very easy to get your hands on a personal netbook or a laptop or an iPad. In other areas, it's not. But again, we are talking about something that's providing access to learning and a means of writing and recording. And it is basic, really important stuff. The last challenge that we come across all the time, particularly in secondary, is this issue of being different. So I was in a school yesterday. How's it going? It works really well. His writing with the netbook is good. It's much higher quality, but he doesn't want to use it anymore. It was good for the first half of the term, but now he doesn't come and pick it up from the learning support base anymore. Why? He doesn't want to be different from his mates. And you can have a conversation, as I'm sure you have, and we can all agree that the quality of the written work, or any of the work, is better. We know it's better, the subject teachers know it's better, the people know that it's better. I don't want to be different. So there's this issue of being different. There's also a bit of a stigma, and so I've scrolled out alpha smart and put in what some young people refer to alpha smarts as, which are alpha thicks, because they get given typically to the young people who've got some kind of difficulty. And this is a real biggie, I think. So let's think about the potential benefits. We've seen some of the real benefits of existing technology, we've seen some of the challenges. So how can this stuff, maybe make the world a better place? What are the potential benefits for young learners with additional support needs? Well, the first one is that the battery lasts for ages. You can carry them around. It's not like a laptop which weighs 3 kilos and has got a battery life of 5 minutes. You turn it on and you go away and you come back, and then maybe on a good day it might work. And then it tells you that it's got to update its virus scan software, and it's got Java that needs to do its stuff, and then it just randomly says, I'm going to update Windows. Whether you like it or not. I don't care if you're in the middle of your exam. I'm going to do it. Restart now. So this stuff is more practical. It's definitely cooler, I think, at the moment. They are more cooler. I mean, and so the whole difference thing, the stigma stuff, might be helped by the fact that they're cooler. And so I've picked up our comment here from the iPad Scotland evaluation that was done by Education Scotland and Hull University. And it's got lots of interesting insights. I think that there's been a real improvement in motivation for many of my pupils. Several of them have support for learning needs. The one-to-one aspect has meant that the children have really personalised their iPads and made them work the way they want. They have become important tools for learning in a class with many children, surprisingly on a daily basis with the types of work they can come up with. And I don't think you'd get that kind of comment if we were talking about a laptop or a netbook. You might do, but maybe not quite as much. So let's think about some specifics briefly of what mobile devices have got to offer young people with additional support needs. Well, it's small, it's light, it's very straightforward. You can carry it around. If you're visually impaired, we get lots of interesting feedback from teachers of the visually impaired saying good things about iPads. And it turns out that it's not that complicated. The reasons are it's small enough to carry around. You can make the text massive. You can hold it up to your face and you can read it. And it's just trickier with a 3 kilo laptop. Not possible, but it's hard. So visual impairment, absolutely. It's very simple, these devices. The navigation of the thing is straightforward. And so that's good for people who've got a visual impairment, who are relying on the voiceover to tell them where they are. You don't have this, file menu, 3 nested layers of stuff to get down to, the information you want. Very straightforward. And the simplicity of the navigation also lends itself, of course, to young people who've got learning difficulties, because it's easier to find your way around. It doesn't rely quite so much on being able to read, because it's got big, colourful, buttony things. So that's good for learning difficulties. And it's also good for, children on the autistic spectrum, or those of us who just don't work well with text, who work better in a more visual environment. It's got, or they have rather, cameras on the front and the back. We've got built-in microphones, we've got high-quality audio. So for the young people who are more used or more better able to work with audio, brackets, dyslexic, you've got a built-in tool that has it all. And particularly nowadays, when we're talking about a broader definition of what literacy means, not just including the printed word, orthography, then this makes a lot of sense. And it provides a lot of opportunities for people who are more comfortable with audio and less comfortable with text. So you can really see it ticks a lot of the boxes for young people with additional support needs. So some of the benefits, the one that I think is most important for the whole one-to-one issue is if everybody is using the technology, the stigma of being singled out should be reduced. And so this guy that I saw yesterday, who doesn't want to be different, he won't be different provided he's using the same technology as everybody else. So that's exciting. Less difference and more inclusion. And also, by definition, we're going to have greater use of digital text and audio and video, which suits learners who are less comfortable with screens and text. That was one thing that I was really impressed by, how focused they were on their work, recording little sounds to go and taking photos of their friends. So that's a mainstream teacher talking about mainstream use of iPads, but it really works and it helps to include the young people that we would be working with. Low cost is another potential benefit, and this was alluded to earlier on. You can buy an iPad at the Procurement Scotland rate of 248 quid plus VAT, and then you can buy Proloquo to go, say, for £130, total about 450. And that compares with a dedicated communication aid costing 10 times the amount. And so what's happening, as we all know, is that parents are just buying iPads, and they're buying apps, or they're downloading free ones. And so we've got this democratisation of, particularly in the field of AAC and voice output aids, but also in all the kind of areas that we work with. You could buy the app version of Text Help Read and Write Gold, costs you £30. The PC version costs you $320 for a single user license. We're not comparing like with like, of course. They don't do exactly the same thing. And an iPad is not a dedicated communication aid. It does some things far worse. It also does some things far better. So we're not saying all you need is an iPad or Proloquo to go. There's a lot of concern. One of the great things about democratisation of AEC and assistive technology is that we can all get more involved. We can try things out. You can do it at home. It's everywhere, and so there's lots more opportunities. But of course, it's a lot trickier to actually nail down things which are helpful, and possibly to avoid people doing things which aren't actually as good as what they could be doing. So it's a different set of challenges. Potential benefits. Well, if we're all using digital, that guy that needed all the textbooks scanned, he won't be one in a class, or rather 1 in 8 subject classes, because all the young people will be using digital resources. And so if you're a teacher, sitting in a school, and everybody's using the digital medium, you're much more likely to be quite happy about that. You'll be producing your materials, your resources in PowerPoint and with audio and with Word, and firing them out via Glow and Dropbox, iCloud, and okay, maybe not too realistic, but you can see if everybody's doing the digital thing, we're no longer just having to make a massive effort for one child or a small number of people. And also, staff are more likely to have the necessary ICT and pedagogical skills to actually make use of this stuff. So the idea that you've got a young person, who's got that particular unique bunch of kit in your class, and you're trying to do your best to make use of it, That's less likely to happen because we're all going to be using digital technology. So a comment from a teacher at Sheen's: I'm enjoying never having to photocopy extra sheets for when children have lost theirs, and not having to get everyone to write down details of each week's reading. Everything is easily available at school or at home on the Wicked space. So, almost finished before coffee. So the potential benefits, I think, are really exciting. It's a great time to be involved in this field. I think we can genuinely look forward to seeing some great things. However, how do we get there? And so I'll leave you with a couple of thoughts, because I don't have any answers, which is very galling, because what I like to do is go along to schools and say, well, here's what we can do, here's how we can fix it, but nothing to offer, I'm afraid. What we do recognise is it's a big problem. The sheer complexity of what's going on, the speed of change, is a bit of an issue. Which apps, who, why, what, iPad, Android, netbook, iPad mini, help. And I'm not surprised that you get people phoning up on the switchboard saying, no, just because we do as well. And, getting on for 775,000 apps on the iTunes store, 300,000 native to an iPad. It's quite tricky to find the one that will actually do what you want it to do. So just the sheer pace and keeping up with that, I think, is definitely a problem. And in this kind of headlong rush for one-to-one mobile shininess, I would just like to issue a reminder that we don't necessarily want to have every single child in your school with one of these things, because not everybody can actually use one of these things. So, accessibility is one of these words that I think has got three different aspects to it. If it's accessible, you need to have one. That's the first thing. You need to have it in your hand. You need to be able to access it. You need to be able to possess it. And if everybody's got one-to-one devices, that's great. But, we need to have a situation where you can actually get your hands on a device. Second thing is, can I actually use it? And the pupils that we work with, although we've heard, we've talked about how good an iPad is, maybe if you've got a visual impairment, if you're him, it's a complete waste of space, because he uses a joystick to operate his computer, and you cannot plug a joystick into an iPad. He's got cerebral palsy. He can't do the touch thing at all. And so if his class went and bought a pile of iPads, he would be back to being, unique. He just couldn't do it. Similarly, its iPad at this moment in time has got very poor switch access. The app developers are trying their best, but it's just rubbish, I'm afraid. It's not up to scratch. Don't bother. Don't go there. Wait for a year. It might be better then. Bear that in mind to avoid getting back to this stigma situation. And the third one, can I access learning resources with it? As we saw earlier, if SQA are wanting you to do your Scottish set texts and you can't actually get hold of them, then we have a wee bit of work to do in that regard. And even although you've got RM books on the front of the Glow Launchpad, what you'll find if you actually go and have a look is that you can get plenty of books for the EQA and EdXL courses, GCSE stuff, but you can't get any for the Scottish secondary curriculum. And I'm sure that will change in 6 months' time, but at the moment, so we'll leave it there. We'll go and have some coffee, and I'm 2 minutes over time.